Okay, so I'll run through, I think what the material I'm going to cover actually takes off reasonably well from what Nick just showed us. Um, let's spend a little bit of time understanding the exact regulations that are affecting us in the liquidity space. Of course, these are contextualized. There's several moves on the capital side, quite visible. And of course, the FSA's recent moves on liquidity risk are also well known. Added to that is the BIS complementary regulations surrounding liquidity risk as well. All of this through consultative papers happened in the, I'd say, in the August, September timeframe last year. So we pretty much got a fair amount of new regulation in place, notably driven by the FSA at this time. And we'll presently see what those principally mean for all of us. The other thing, of course, is, I just picked up a recent IMF View article on this topic. So it's a pretty dynamic space. There's a fair amount of concern, both in the press, amongst the regulatory community, and in the political community around this topic. So you'll see a fair amount of quick movement around this, and expect change, expect a fair amount of more regulation emerging. And the question is about bank surcharges, too big to fail, additional liquidity-related guidelines for institutions deemed very large or significant in size in any economy. So that's the kind of background, the regulatory background that we are now grappling with. Now, to the issue of the other issue of conditions here are, first, of course, yes, kind of restating the obvious, failures of major banks, inadequate management processes surrounding capital adequacy, incomplete understanding of risks, undercapitalization, large unforeseen exposures, life-threatening risk issues around liquidity risk, and of course, there is this whole reinforcement of ICAP guidelines and whatever the FSA is doing. So pretty much a restatement of what's going on. So again, Nick spoke briefly about stress testing. So let's take the top-down understanding and look at it. Let's understand what it is that we mean by stressing your balance sheet for liquidity and doing that in a consistent manner that's consistent enterprise-wide and it takes into account life-threatening events, likely life-threatening events. That's really what the stress testing process is all about. And the points being made in this slide are about the regulators increasingly demanding it. The whole original notion that, liquidity risk and balance sheet would be fine, the Treasury will manage it. That's no longer a valid concern, it's a corporate concern. So there's a kind of shift away from the old ALM, ALCO, treasurer-driven process, away into corporate concern, visibility to board, visibility to regulators. So there's a certain shift away that we'd like to kind of consider and discuss today. The other issue is around stress testing practices, the whole issue about how is it related to loss accounting, loss recognition, capital adequacy. The interplay between all of this and liquidity is another emerging concern. And the last point was the actual design of liquidity stresses and how it's done, whether it's transparent and open. There's a clear understanding of what bucket shifting is contemplated under these adverse scenarios. That transparency and visibility is again something that regulators are demanding. So there's a whole bunch of issues surrounding our current state and where we need to be going. And now this is the FSA's approach. The FSA has really come out with rather draconian and stringent guidelines. So I was at this leadership lunch just an hour or so ago, and one of the CEOs of a major Asian bank is saying that just by virtue of a branch of his being in the UK, there are a whole bunch of additional guidelines that are now being inflicted upon him. So this is a major concern, and we expect to find that FSA's rules are now going to be a common concern for the Asian community as well over time. So it kind of makes some sense to understand what these demands are going to be. Broadly, the whole self-sufficiency and individual liquidity adequacy standards are all about ring-fencing assets in the UK, making sure that the branch in the UK is going to survive in the event of a catastrophic liquidity event. Now, if every jurisdiction that you operated in started behaving like that, you may as well have standalone entities and give them capital and tell them to do their own thing. But that's the kind of unprecedented and excessive liquidity risk management demand that's now upon us. Of course, beyond that, there's reporting, there's a whole systems and control issue, and group-wide and cross-border liquidity. I mean, this is almost directly as a result of the Lehman Brothers last-minute settlement flows between New York and London, where the depositors in the UK at the end did not have the or the depositors in the US did not have the assets to cover whatever they had. So this was arising from intra-company cross-border flows, which also these fellows are looking to control. So we're seeing a whole bunch of concerns emerge directly as a result of this crisis, pretty draconian, attempting to ring-fence assets in the UK in very specific ways, and we expect this to emerge over time elsewhere. Again, back to Nick's point, what does this all mean for us as bankers? It means a whole bunch of things. The ability to do a variety of things inside the institution to be able to manage this emerging important class of risk. Involves data. It involves formal application of adjustments, a clean understanding of unstressed liquidity, legal vehicle or branch-wise understanding, the creation and management of enterprise-level stress assumptions and scenarios. Actually, the management of what you consider to be highly liquid parts of your balance sheet, the reserving and the creation of collateral for repos, and to be able to then design the haircuts required on the liquid part of your portfolio under stress conditions. So it's a complex, iterative beast that you'll have to design into practically a daily process to be able to show that you're completely on top of the liquidity risk in your books. So we do, I mean, this gives you a sense of all the things that have to be happening within the institution. So an old traditional ALM system just doesn't cut it. You'll have to overlay this on top of what you thought you were doing very well in an ALCO setup. I guess I'll kind of stop here. There are a whole bunch of, I think, dashboarding and reporting stuff, which, yeah, let me just stop here so that we'll get on with the discussions. Thanks.